Hello and welcome. I am Raghav, and in this session we are going to learn how we can use PyTest with our Selenium code. So we are going to create a very basic simple Google search test with PyTest, and then we will also learn how we can use PyTest fixtures to create setup and tear down for our Selenium tests, and then we will see how we can use parameterization with PyTest. Parameterization means we can parameterize some values or create variables and then can use these variables in our test cases, and then we can run the test case by giving multiple values for those variables. Do not worry, I will tell you exactly how it is done and I will show you practicals on this, and all through this session we will see demos and examples. You can follow along with me with hands-on, and if you face any questions, issues, you can always let me know in the comment section. So let's get started. In the last session, we started with PyTest. We learned what is PyTest, how we can implement PyTest in our Python project. And if I take you to my project, so this all we have done in the last session. We have seen how to add PyTest, and then how do we use all these, how do we create different tests and then use them and run them in PyTest. So let us now create a new Python file. So I will go to my project, and here I'm going to create a new Python file. I can create it in the tests folder or wherever I want. So let me just create within the project folder. I will say new Python file, and I will say, you can name it anything. I will say Selenium Pytest demo 1 and hit enter, and you can see the file is created here, and it will by default take the extension .py. Okay, and we have got our file here. Now here we will first import PyTest and all the Selenium packages that we require for our test. So at the top I will say import PyTest. Make sure that PyTest is already added in your project. You have already installed PyTest, and all this we have learned in the last session. And then I will also import Selenium WebDriver. So I will say from Selenium import WebDriver, and in fact I can go to any of my earlier test and can get it from there. So let me see this one. Yeah, I can get it from here. So this is the one, or if I see any other test, we have this test. Okay, let me just take it from here. This was the earlier test we created. So I'm just going to copy the Selenium libraries or packages from here that we will be requiring for our test. Okay, now you can see here all these are grayed out. That means these libraries or packages that we have imported in this file are not yet used in this file or in this script. Therefore all these are grayed out. So as we will create our code, you will see these will be active here. So here we have done the step number 2. Now step number 3 is we will create a function and then write the code for Google search test. So let me just create a function. I will say def Google search test. So this is how we declare a function, and then from the next line onwards I can start writing the code. Okay, so here I can just copy the code from my earlier test. So here is the code. Let me just copy this one, and let me see if I have some more code where I can have some more options. Yes, you can see this is the code that we created in our elements of how to find elements session. Here we are going to google.com, then we are finding the search box by the ID of the search box, just the search box, and say inspect. I should see the properties here, and yes, you can see here we have this ID which is this one. This is the ID APJFQB. So this is what, copy all this code. It should start from here, declaring driver, and then using the driver instance to open a browser, go to the location of the web page, and then all this video. So you will see all the packages. So by is not yet imported. So if I hover over this by class, it is showing me the option import from WebDriver, close, and driver dot quit, and then I'll just print, I will say test. So we have created a very simple Google search test. Okay, also I have added the code here as well. So this is what we have done. Okay, now I will say I have to run this test. So to run, we have two options here. I can just do a right click and then I will see run PyTest or run this particular test, or I can also go to the command line or the terminal and say PyTest and give the location of this particular file. So let me try both the ways. Make sure you have saved your test and do a right click, and you can see here I am getting run Selenium Pytest demo. So if you just click here, you can see it has started the execution, and as of now it just finished it. Let me see, I will check the issue now. So here we have got this script here. Alright, I think one thing we missed is we have studied in the last session where we started PyTest that the function name should start with test. So I should name it as test and then something. So I will say test underscore Google search, and I will save this. And if I do a right click now, here I am getting this run Python tests in this particular file. Okay, so I will now run this, and yes, now it is a PyTest. I can also, yes, it is running here. Opens the browser, goes to google. Has passed. Okay, so this is all working fine, and I'll double click here to minimize this window. So we have got our Google search test running. We have also got this time library imported. So let me put it here, and now I will go to the terminal. So we have inbuilt terminal in PyCharm. I will go here. If you want, you can also project folder location, which is Selenium Python in my case, and from here I can say, I will say PyTest, and then because my file is directly under the project folder, that is Selenium Python, I can directly give the file name here. I will say Selenium, I will press tab, it should autocomplete, Selenium underscore PyTest underscore demo 1.py, and I will hit enter, and yes, it is now running our test. Okay, so this is all running fine. Let us wait for this process to complete, and yes, this is completed and one test is passed, and now you can see here we are getting this, and we are also able to run it from the command line. Alright, so we have done step number 4. Now let us see how we can use PyTest fixtures, and basically we want to set up and tear down in our test. So if you see in your tests, you will see there are some steps which have to be repeated for every test. For example, setting up the WebDriver, setting up the driver instance, and then at the end closing the driver instance. So these are setup and tear down that are common for every test, and therefore you can separately mention this in a setup and tear down function instead of writing it for every test. So for that, in PyTest we have called something called as fixture, where we can do this setup and tear down of the driver or anything we want to do as setup or tear down. So we are going to use fixture in our test case, and for that I will say at pytest dot fixture, and then here I will say def, I will give the name driver, and then I will say I have also written the code here. So you can see this is what we are going to do. So here in this driver function we are going to add all that we have to do as setup and then yield the driver, and then we will do tear down whatever we have to do as a tear down of a test function. So this code, that is driver webdriver.chrome, that means to set up the WebDriver and initiate it, this I will cut from here and I will put inside this. Let me also expand this. I will double click here so that it is available in a full window. Okay, and then we also have option to add implicit wait. So implicit wait is the time that the browser or the driver should wait before it makes an element, before it finds an element. So for example, you are finding some particular element or anything on the web page and it is taking some time. So how much time you should wait before failing that particular step? So that is what is implicit wait we have here. I will say driver dot implicitly wait for 10 seconds, and then I will say yield driver, and then I will write the tear down, that is quit, and I can cut it from here. I am going to this step and pressing Ctrl X to delete the entire line. So now this is our PyTest fixture. Okay, uh, this is not required, colon is not required here. So this is how we can see it, and also I will have to, so if I see, you can see it is saying two usages. If I click here, you can see here driver.get Google search box, this is where it is being used, and if you want you can also pass this as a parameter explicitly as well in this function. So I can also pass it like this. Okay, so I can do like this. Okay, now let us try to run this. Also now you can see the PyTest library is also activated here, import PyTest. So I will now do a right click and I am getting this option. I will say run and let us see what happens. Okay, so this is working fine, and this is how we can use fixtures to do setup and tear down in our Selenium code using PyTest. Now the next thing we will do is, we have already ran and checked the results. So now we are going to use parameterization with PyTest. So parameterization is a technique that can be used to run same test with multiple values. Okay, for example, let us say we have a login test. If I go to something like some demo website like this one where we have a sample login test. So let us see this one. Here we have this login section. Okay, now suppose I create a test for this login and I want to use multiple values, multiple credentials to test login with different credentials, let's say valid, invalid credentials. For that, instead of writing multiple tests or separate tests, I can write a single test and then can use different values using parameterization. So let us see how to do this, and for that let me create a new test. So I will go here I want to see the project structure. Yes, it is here. And I'm going to create a new file. I will go to the project folder and say new Python file. I will name it as Selenium Pytest demo 2. So we have got this file created. Also, if I go to the first file and if I try to rename it, let me try to rename this one. I will right click and say refactor and rename. I will call it as PyTest Selenium demo. Okay, yeah, that is fine. This also I can press F2 or do a right click and I will rename this. I will say PyTest demo 2. Alright, so we have got this file created. Okay, so here in this particular file I am going to create a login test on this website, try testing this. So the initial steps, the imports will be same. So let me just copy the import. So copy this from an earlier test. I think we had created this earlier. Yeah, you can see this driver. uh, Let me see, we had done this in the earlier session. So let me see, in the elements we had used this particular website. So basically you have to go here and then add username, password and click on the login button. Okay, I think I have copied this code here. Let me just copy it from here. This is the test I want. I will also keep this in the notes of this video, so just in case you want to copy it from there, you can do that. This is not coming in the right format. Okay, as of now we don't have username and password. I will tell you this in a moment, how did we get here. And I will for now tell you what I have done here is, so we have created this login test where we are going to this website, try testing this. If I check the username and do right click and inspect, we have the ID value here. So you can see ID is here, which is username. Similarly for password also we have the ID property and we have got password. And then value of the button, that is login. Again, if you see here we have this value of this button as login. Using that we have created the XPath. Okay, you can also use Selenium IDE to record and then get all these locators as we have seen in the record session. And then here test, in the password I am sending test. You can see here the username and password are test here, test and test. Okay, which are valid credentials. And then I am asserting that after login I should see successful in the next page. So I can say here test. I am doing it manually for now just to check and show you. When I log in, it goes to this page and we see this login successful. So this is what I am asserting there, just to make sure that login is successful. Okay, I can also add some sleep time so that you can see this. So before clicking on the submit button, I will say time dot sleep for, let's say, 1 second, and after I will save. and we will run this. I will do a right click, and we have got this run Python test, and let's see. It was very fast and it is all pass. I can double click here and see the results. So everything is pass here. Okay, now you can see here I have hard coded these two values, username and password, and I will have to always create new test if I have to use different values. So this is where we will get the help from parameterization. And here to parameterize, I am again going to use a PyTest fixture called pytest.mark.parameterize, and here I can give these two variables, username, password, and then give the values. So you can use any number of values, any number of test values and set of values here, and then these will be passed in the function, in the test function as parameters here, and then we can use it in place of username and password where we are hard coding the values. Okay, I have this written here. I'm going to copy it from here and add it in my test. Again, there is some format. I'll just copy it from my earlier script. Yes, it is here. I'll copy it from here, add it here, and then make sure that you also pass it in the test function as parameters password, and it should not be within quotes, it should be directly used like this, and save it. And now let us run it again and check. So I am going to test, and you can see user2 and pass2 which is failed, and now it will run the third time using the third set of values, that is user3 and pass, and it is based on the values that you give here. So the first set was valid credentials and then we had invalid credentials. So this is how we can use parameterization with PyTest, and I hope this was very useful for you. If you have any questions, you can let me know. Please try some more examples. There are a lot of things to do with PyTest. I have covered few things, few very basic and very commonly used things and features of PyTest, but there will be many other things that you can try. And if you face any issues, let me know. I will see you in the next session. Thank you for watching and never stop learning.